Welcome to the Great Basin Smoke Dispersion Briefing for Wednesday, December 13th. This is Gina McGuire. Over the last 30 days, we've had precipitation mainly focused over the northern half of the Great Basin, but even much of this precipitation has been below normal, with the exception of parts of the Sierra into western Nevada and small portions of northeast Nevada up into Idaho, especially in the higher elevations, which have been near to just above normal. However, very dry conditions have continued over southern Nevada, the Arizona Strip, and southern and eastern Utah. Even over the last 90 days, some areas of far southern Nevada into the Arizona Strip have not seen any precipitation. Looking at snowfall, over the last 72 hours, we've had very dry conditions with a ridge in place across the Great Basin, so no new precipitation or snowfall. And the snow depth is highest generally over the central Idaho mountains into Wyoming, with still some snowfall in the high elevations of the Uinta Mountains into the northern Wasatch and into the central Sierra. Looking at the satellite loop from this morning, we still have a strong ridge of high pressure in place off the west coast. However, we do have an area of low pressure now dropping south into the northern portion of the basin. It's bringing more significant cloud cover to Idaho and to northern Nevada, and some precipitation to central Idaho. This will help break down the ridge over parts of northern and eastern areas of the Great Basin, bringing some breezy winds and some precipitation over the next 24 hours. However, the rest of the southern and western areas of the basin will remain under strong inversions and remain dry. Looking at the conditions for later today, that precipitation moving into central Idaho this morning will move south and east across the rest of Idaho into Wyoming and northern Utah. Therefore, we will see some new snowfall in the high elevations. However, the rest of western and southern areas will remain under inversions with near normal temperatures, cool morning lows, and again, those strong inversions will keep the ventilation index very low in most of these areas over the western half of the Great Basin. These northerly winds will also remain fairly light over the rest of the basin with the exception of southern areas where winds will become breezy later this afternoon as that system passes by to the north. Also looking into California, we will continue as this ridge of high pressure remains in place off the west coast. These north to northeast gusty winds will still be an issue over the next several days with continued fire weather concerns. Looking at the mixing height for today, again, very low mixing heights underneath or near that ridge of high pressure over the northern half of Nevada, with mixing heights a little bit higher in the moderate range over southern areas. Looking into Thursday, that ridge remains in place over the western half of the basin, again with that northerly flow generally affecting the eastern and southern areas with lighter winds over the west. Therefore, dispersion will remain quite poor, especially over the northern half of the basin, and much better over southern Nevada into the Arizona Strip and southern Utah. Dry conditions will return on Thursday basin-wide. Looking at the transport winds, again a very similar pattern with that high in about the same area, gusty northerly winds in the south and light winds over the north and west. Looking at mixing heights, again, very similar pattern, higher mixing heights in the south and very low mixing heights to the north. Therefore, these strong inversions will remain in place for today and tomorrow, but we will see some improvement later in the week. By Friday, what we do see as a change is that ridge starts to push a little bit further off the west coast, and we have a trough of low pressure dropping into the Pacific Northwest. This will allow winds to increase, and we'll start to see better mixing over northern and western areas beginning on Friday, along with some breezy winds. Early in the day Friday, we'll still see poor dispersion, but again, that might improve later in the day and into Saturday. Looking at the wind picture, very similar, still light winds most of the day on Friday, but those will start to pick up later in the evening on Friday. Mixing heights remaining low early in the day in the north and moderate in the south. Looking at the forecast clearing index for Utah, with very little change in conditions, the clearing index will remain relatively low. The only exception will be in the high elevations of the Wasatch and down into southwest Utah, where winds will be breezy today. Therefore, the clearing index will be a little bit higher, but that will drop down as those winds decrease for Thursday and Friday. The overall forecast amount of precipitation over the next few days, again, we will see some precipitation today into tomorrow over mainly Idaho, Wyoming, and northern Utah, with possibly a few light showers as we move with that system on Friday into northern Nevada. Otherwise, the rest of the basin will remain dry. Now looking toward the weekend, as that system moves through Friday and Friday night, what's not depicted on this picture is we will see precipitation drop south briefly into the northern half of Nevada and even into western Nevada and the Sierra. We'll see some light precipitation as well, mainly Friday night into Saturday morning. And by Saturday afternoon, most of that precipitation starts to move south and east. So most areas of the basin, with the exception of the far south, will see at least some light precipitation with this system Friday into Saturday. But again, amounts will not be overly high across Nevada and Utah, with some higher amounts up north into Idaho and Wyoming. Dispersion also will start to decrease as the system moves through on Saturday. Therefore, poor ventilation over western and northern Nevada returns later in the day on Saturday after the system moves through, with still good dispersion over eastern and southern areas that are out ahead of the system. By Sunday, this area of low pressure starts to move south and east of the basin, with high pressure building in again. Therefore, we will see poor ventilation over much of the northern two-thirds of the Great Basin, the only exception being southern Nevada, parts of the Arizona Strip that will see some still gusty northerly winds for one more day on Sunday. As we move into next week, still a ridge in place over the southern half of the basin, but however, we will start to see some weaker systems move by to the north. Therefore, Idaho into Wyoming, possibly even northeast Utah, will see at least some cloud cover, if not additional precipitation on Monday. Poor ventilation really region-wide as we go into early next week. By Tuesday, again, that storm system is mainly focused to the north. Therefore, central Idaho into Wyoming will be the main areas that will see off and on periods of precipitation, with drier conditions returning further south. Poor dispersion once again region-wide on Tuesday, with generally light winds under the ridge of high pressure. Looking at the overall forecast amount of precipitation for Saturday morning through Monday morning, and again only light amounts, but generally up into Idaho, Wyoming, and northern Utah. If we look a little further down the line, the 8 to 14 day outlook takes us into the third week of December, and we can see a return of below normal temperatures to the northern half of the Great Basin and still warm in the south. However, still that dry signature is in place over much of the Great Basin, especially over the western half. These systems might start to target Wyoming into Utah as we get clipped to the north. However, once again, we're not looking at large storms to affect the area through the holiday. That concludes our briefing for today. Check back on Friday for the latest updates.